situation.
The average American worker makes just under $68,000, but high home prices mean that workers often need a six-figure salary to become a homeowner.
So what can one do when wages are rising but still not enough to reach major life milestones? Michael Masserant back with us now from the Retirement Education Foundation. So what can people do?
So in the first segment, we talked a lot about how people should be saving and budgeting, and that's always the go-to advice for a lot of people is save and budget, save and budget, save and budget. But one of the pieces that can really be helpful that isn't talked about enough, in my opinion, is increasing your income. Increasing your income can go a long way to make the saving and the budgeting easier. And for a lot of people, it just comes down to figuring out, okay, what career path am I in, or what career path do I want to be in, and increasing your skills, getting certifications, meeting with your managers or bosses and asking, okay, I want a promotion in 3 months or in 6 months or in 1 year. What do you need to see from me to achieve that promotion, and what kind of pay raises that come with?
And you say, actually, that works. Because that may seem like, oh, that's never going to work, and my boss is just going to shut me down. But if you go, it looks like 82% of senior managers are willing to give raises to workers who ask and probably do what they need to do.
Yeah, so in that survey, 82% of hiring managers and senior managers said that they would be willing to give a promotion and or a raise to people who asked. Now, that strikes me as a little high of a percentage in terms of maybe they were feeling, generous in that survey. But for a lot of people, just figuring out what is it going to take to get to the next step of the career path. Because a lot of people, and we try to teach this to the younger people who we work with, is trying to understand, pick someone who you want to emulate and try to find a mentor and see what do they do, how do they carry themselves in the workplace, what kind of skills and input are they having on the workplace, and try to emulate that if you want a career path similar to theirs.
You talk about more income, and try to always look at things in context, but it feels like so many more people are struggling now than, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. You've got two parents working, both working, and they're still struggling. Is that a spending problem? Is that a price hike problem? What is it?
So it's definitely a little bit of both. Now, it's obviously no secret. Since 2020, we've had about 24% cumulative inflation. So 24%.
Wages don't rise at 24% in that time.
Wages, they were close to keeping up, but not quite. So even if people were getting raises, they weren't typically getting raises quite as fast as inflation. And so that's been one of the problems. Now, people do have spending problems. In this country we talked about earlier, we have over $1 trillion in credit card debt. That's a massive problem. But that's why it's so important to try to strive to increase your income, to try to secure some of these things like buying a home. The average age of the new home buyer keeps getting older and older and older. It's harder to buy homes these days than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. There are a lot of structural problems that get into that, which we probably can't tackle today in terms of home building and things like that. But we're beginning to see a bit of a shift where there's becoming more and more homes on the market, more sellers than buyers. And so what that may lead to, which is relief for a lot of home buyers, is maybe some price relief here.
Michael, when you talk about a budget, you talk about the 50-30-20 rule, and that's kind of a simplified way for people to consider their money.
Yeah, if you can break it down into really 3 categories: your needs, your wants, and then saving. So if you set aside 50% of your budget for things that you absolutely have to have, rent or a mortgage, food, all those things that have to be taken care of, 30% can be set aside for things that you want, and then 20% set aside for savings. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be some complicated system. Right. If you just have your needs, your wants, and your savings. Now, the one thing we do tell people is set up the needs and the savings before the wants. Because a lot of people will say, well, I got my needs set aside and I took my wants, and my wants went from 30% to 45% this week. That means my savings is only 5%. No. Do the needs and the savings first, lock that in, automate it. And once you automate it, it makes the spending a little less guilt-ridden. If you know your needs are taken care of, if you know your savings is automated, now you can go spend and not feel guilty about it because you know you're being financially responsible.
There's just such a need for self-discipline too, in order to achieve all of this.
It really is. I tell people all the time, building wealth and making good financial choices, it is not rocket science. It just takes discipline. It takes a little bit of education, but it's a lot of discipline. You don't need to be reading all the hot stock tips, and you really shouldn't be doing stuff like that.
Right.
Just setting up the basics and staying disciplined will take you so far.
Well, it's kind of like taking care of our health and our wealth. It's about, I mean, it's doing some of the stuff that seems simple. You know, you're eating fruits and vegetables, you're getting a little exercise, you're sleeping. And that's very boring, and that takes, you know, daily discipline, just like saving money.
And, you know, people get impacted. They see their friends and family taking vacations, buying the cars, and they think, I want to do those things too. But just understanding what are my goals and how am I going to get there will take you a really long way.
There's a trade-off, that's for sure. Michael Masserant, Retirement Education Foundation, refedu.org.